till now, we were taking a look at different market forms. Okay. We saw a market wherein I have multiple firms and there is fierce competition. The goods are homogeneous, that is, they are non-differentiated. And each and every firm in the industry is so small that they are price takers. So that was the case of perfect competition market form, wherein each and every firm take price as given and accordingly they operate. So here in this case, P was equal to MC, marginal cost. Okay. The second market form, which we just considered, was the case of a monopoly, wherein I have a single seller and they have complete control over the prices. Okay. And we saw different cases of price discrimination as well in the case of monopolist. The last but not the least, the most realistic market that can be seen in the world is that of oligopoly. Oligopoly is a market form wherein I have few firms in the industry. There are significant barriers to entry. That is, even if firms see that there are profits to be had, it's not very easy to get into the industry. There are significant technological barriers or human capital barriers that are available in oligopoly. It can also be a very capital intensive industry, and hence not all firms can get into it as freely as perfect competition. Okay, so there are few firms and there is some control over price. Mind it, there is some control over price, not complete control, but some control. So perfect competition, I have no control over the price. Monopoly, I have total control over the price. Oligopoly, I only have some control over the price. There are a few firms and there is competition. Okay. This oligopoly market form is often also called imperfect competition. It's not perfect competition, it's imperfect competition. Okay. There are a few more industries which come under imperfect competition. One very popular industry or market form is that of monopolistic competition, which we will be considering in the later classes. Okay. So imperfect competition, most common are two market forms. One is monopolistic competition, wherein price is equal to average cost and the profit is equal to 0. And the other is that of oligopoly, wherein I have a few firms in the industry and there is competition or rivalry between them. Okay. Yes, Ramdev, exactly. So would any of you want to give me examples for oligopoly? That will be good. A few of you are already putting in the chat box. You cannot resist and you're putting in the chat box. What are a few examples of oligopoly? Telecom, toothpaste industry, okay, airlines, soft drinks, okay, medicine, automobile. So most of the industries that we think about will fall under the category of oligopoly. Sanitary ware, right? Okay. So all of these are very, whatever you think, they are normally oligopolies, whichever industry that you can think of. Yeah, correct. It is the most realistic industry amongst all the industries. Like perfect competition is hardly seen in the real life. Monopoly is basically government companies, more or less government companies. Okay. Oligopoly is the most common. Yeah. So these are a few examples of oligopoly. Right. Should I list it down? Okay, let me list it down. What are the different kinds of oligopolies that are possible? So, telecom industry, airline industry, someone said sanitary ware. Okay, very interesting. So, whatever industry that you can ultimately think about will all be in oligopoly. Petroleum, yes. Okay. Most of the industries that I can think of will all fall under the purview of oligopoly. Right. Now, oligopoly itself is a market form which is characterized by few firms. Under oligopoly, there can again be two subdivisions. Okay. The two subdivisions are as follows. One is cooperative oligopoly. That is, the few firms are cooperating with each other. Okay. This is the case where I have a cartel, or all the firms in the oligopoly, they collude and they work as a single firm. Okay. So it is the case where there is no rivalry and all the firms together behave as one large monopolist. Okay. Yes, Debolina, that is correct. E-commerce can also be an example of oligopoly. Other case is non-cooperative. Non-cooperative is also often called as rivalry. There is rivalry between firms. Okay. Under the rivalry concept, there are two kinds of rivalry that are possible between oligopoly. Two kinds of rivalry possible. One is the quantity rivalry, and the other is the price rivalry. Quantity rivalry can again be of two kinds. One where there is no leader, there is no follower. Okay. No firm is a large firm, no firm is a small firm. Okay. So quantity rivalry will encapsulate a case where all the firms are equal. That is the Cournot case. Okay. As postulated by the economist Cournot, named after him. Cournot. Quantity rivalry, where one firm is a large firm and the other is a smaller firm, was first postulated by Stackelberg, and it's named after him, the Stackelberg model. Okay. So these are the two different quantity rivalries that can exist. Price rivalry, again, two price rivalries can exist. First one is where I have no firm is larger than the other. So that is the case of Bertrand model. So an apple to apple comparison of price rivalry with all firms being equal is a Bertrand competition. Under the quantity, the same thing is the Cournot model, where all the firms are equal. Okay. And the other one is the price leadership model, where one of the firms is the leader and the other is the follower. Okay. So these are the different kinds of non-cooperative oligopolies that are possible, right? One is where there is quantity rivalry and the other is where there is price rivalry. Am I understandable? If I am understandable, then let's go into the next part of today's class, that is understanding each of these in detail. Okay, right. So let's make an attempt at understanding this with an example. So let's consider few firms can also be said to be a simplistic case of two firms. So let's consider two firms in this oligopoly industry, wherein I'm considering a very similar example that I normally consider. This is my demand function, cost function of the first firm, cost function of the second firm. Okay. So this is what we have, right? And we start with quantity rivalry. Or let's begin with the cooperative case. Okay. So first case is that of cooperative or case of cartel. So in the case of cartel, the two firms will behave like a multi-plant monopolist. Okay, what will it do? The two firms will jointly profit maximize. Profit is equal to 120 minus x1 minus x2 into x1 plus x2, assuming that the total quantity produced is firm 1 plus firm 2 quantity, minus 10x1 minus x2 square by 2. So profit with respect to x1, 120 minus 2x1 minus x2 minus x2 minus 10. Okay. Profit of the second, 120 minus x1 minus 2x2 minus x1 minus x2 is equal to 0. So what do we have here? 2x1 plus 2x2 is equal to 110. And here I have 2x1 plus 3x2 is equal to 120. Or in other words, x2 is equal to 10. x2 is equal to 10. x1 is equal to 45. Can all of you see this? I simultaneously solve it and I'll get x2 is equal to 10 and x1 is equal to 45. Total production by the cartel is equal to 55. Okay. This is like the monopolist output given two different plants. So like a multi-plant monopolist. Okay. And the price is equal to 120 minus 55, which is equal to 65. Okay. So price is equal to 65, quantity is equal to 55. For a cooperative oligopoly, wherein all the firms behave like one single firm. Quantity rivalry. Cournot model. Both firms are equal in terms of the size. No one can dictate over each other. So one firm is not the leader and the other is the follower. No, both are the same. There is no leader. Okay. So then in this case of quantity rivalry, what happens is profit of the first firm is basically 120 minus x1 minus x2. It will only be concerned about its own output, minus 10x1. This is how the first firm will profit maximize. Derivative 120 minus 2x1 minus x2 minus 10. Or in other words, 2x1 plus x2 is equal to 110. X1 is equal to 110 minus x2 by 2. This equation wherein x1 quantity is depending on how much x2 is producing is called the reaction function of firm 1. It's called the reaction function of firm 1. Similarly, profit of firm 2 is 120 minus x1 minus x2 into x2 minus x2 square by 2. Derivative x2 is equal to 120 minus x1 by 3, or in other words, 40 minus x1 by 3. This is commonly known as the reaction function of firm 2. Okay. Now we solve x1 and x2 simultaneously in order to find out what will be the quantities that will be produced by the two Cournot firms. So we solve these two equations simultaneously. 2x1 plus x2 is equal to 110 and x2 is equal to this. So from here I get 3x2, x1 plus 3x2 is equal to 120. Okay. So if I double this, 2x1 plus 6x2 is equal to 240. 2x1 plus x2 is equal to 110. 5x2, 130, x2, 26. Okay, x2 is equal to 26, 2x1 is equal to 110 minus 26, 84, x1 is equal to 42. This is what I will get as the Cournot outputs. Okay. In order to explain this over a diagram, let's try and see what to do here. This I call it as x1. This I call it as x2. If I do not produce any x2, it is 110. Okay. Sorry, if I produce only x2, it is 110. If I do not produce any x2, it is 55. So if I put x2 is equal to 0, it is 55. If I put x1 is equal to 0, it is 110. Similarly, x1 is equal to 0, x2 is equal to 40. x2 is equal to 0, x1 is equal to 120. Okay, this is the reaction function of firm 1, reaction function of firm 2. Okay, and both the reaction functions intersect at the point which gives us the Cournot equilibrium, wherein x1 is equal to 42 and x2 is equal to 26. No, we are not, Nidhi. We are basically solving the reaction functions simultaneously. I'm not putting any reaction function in anyone's profit equation. That will happen in Stackelberg, wherein one is the leader and the other is the follower. Okay, this is what happens. Now, please understand a few things by looking at this diagram. If x2 is equal to 0, or if firm 2 is non-existent, x1 is equal to 55, which is the same as monopolist output. Just look at the cartel output that we just derived. 55, right? So if x2 is non-existent, I have only one firm in this industry, and that is firm 1. Therefore, if only firm 1 is existing, firm 1 will obviously produce like a monopolist and will produce the output of a monopoly. Okay. Similarly, when x2 is equal to 110, I'm already producing the output of a perfectly competitive firm. Look at this. For a perfectly competitive firm, what do? I equate price is equal to marginal cost. So price is basically 120 minus x. Marginal cost is equal to 10 for firm 1. So x is equal to 110. So if I produce any more than 110, if x is greater than 110, I will incur losses because my price is lower than my marginal cost. So if x2 is already producing 110, if I, as firm 1, will produce any more, I will incur losses. So then in that case, my production should be equal to 0. This is the perfectly competitive case. So it's so beautifully considered that if firm 2 is non-existent, firm 1 will be producing the output of the monopolist. And if firm 2 is already producing the output of a perfectly competitive firm, firm 1 should not get into the market. Because if he or she produces any more, he or she will incur losses. Because if the output goes beyond 110, my price goes below 10 and my marginal cost is 10. So if I have to sell at a price below 10, wherein my marginal cost is 10, why should I enter into that industry, or why should I be producing in that industry, right? So that is what happens in the case of perfectly competitive firms. So these two are the reaction functions of firm 1 and firm 2, and this is how they will find out their output. Okay. Till now, is this absolutely clear? The quantity rivalry, that is the Cournot case. Now, second quantity rivalry is the case of Stackelberg, wherein one of the firm is a leader. Let the first firm be the leader and the second firm be the follower. Okay. First one is the leader, second one is the follower. So what will happen here? Second firm profit maximizes. And by differentiating, I find out the reaction function of firm 2. Okay. This is what I'll be able to find. This is the reaction function of firm 2. Since firm 1 will know what is the reaction function of firm 2, firm 1 will want to produce in such a way so that x2 will be equal to a quantity which firm 2 will want him to set. Okay. So firm 1 will profit maximize keeping in mind the reaction function of firm 2. So firm 2 x2 is 40 minus x1 by 3. Thereby converting the entire expression into a simple case of only x1, 120 minus 40, 80, minus x1 plus x2 minus 2 by 3x1 into x1 minus 10x1. Differentiate 80 minus 4 by 3x1 minus 10 is equal to 0. 70 is equal to 4 by 3x1. So that is 210 by 4. That's equal to 52.5. Okay. This is what my x1 is. If x1 is 52.5, x2 is 40 minus 52.5 by 3. So this is 17.5. 40 minus 17.5 is 22.5. This is x2. This is my x1. Please make sure that I don't make any mistakes in calculation or in algebra. Okay. So what I did here was I took into consideration the reaction function of firm 2 into the profit equation of firm 1. So firm 1 will already know how firm 2 will react. And since firm 1 is the leader, firm 1 can keep the profit and the reaction function of firm 2 in his or her mind and substitute it in the profit equation, hence being able to profit maximize with respect to only x1. Nothing is given now to firm 1. Everything is now a variable because I'm being able to substitute x2 in terms of x1 in the profit equation of the first firm. Okay. Right. So in the Cournot case, let's compare quantity, rivalry, Cournot, Stackelberg. Firm 1, firm 2. Firm 1 was producing 42, firm 2 26. Firm 1 52.5, firm 2 22.5. Profit of the first firm in Stackelberg is obviously greater than profit of the first firm in Cournot. And similarly, profit of the second firm in Stackelberg will obviously be less than profit of the second firm in Cournot case. Okay. Whoever is the leader obviously has an advantage, and the follower has a disadvantage. Okay. You can also compare this entire thing from a very simple AR-MR diagram. So if I consider a monopolist, 120 minus X as the demand function, this is 120 Q P. MR, this is AR. Marginal cost 10. I'm talking about the first firm. Please remember, cost function of the first firm was 10. Marginal cost is 10. So the monopolist output is 55. And this is equal to 120 minus 55, that's 65. Okay. And the output of the perfectly comparative firm is this 110. Okay. each and every oligopoly output wherein there is non-cooperation or where there is rivalry will always lie between 55 to 110. Like in the case of Cournot, total output is 42 plus 26. In the case of Stackelberg, it's 22.5 plus 52.5, that is 75. So 75, 68, these are all in between 55 to 110. So whenever I have a few firms with some competition, the output that the industry will have will always lie between the output of a monopolist and the output of a perfectly competitive industry. Okay, that is what we wanted to show here in this diagram. And the price will always lie between the monopolist and the perfectly competitive price. So in the case of Cournot, price is equal to 120 minus 68, that is 52. Stackelberg, the price is equal to 45. Okay. So in fact, when there is one leader and a follower, there the consumer is having more benefits than the Cournot case. Okay. Is this entire concept absolutely clear? The concept of a cartel, the concept of quantity rivalry, wherein I have a Cournot, wherein I have a Stackelberg. Right? Okay. Now let's understand the next step, that is price rivalry.